city, a caring city, we have to be able to meet all of the people right where they are. Service is something that we do, so I feel like it's an obligation. You can serve in many ways, and this is just one of the ways that I could serve today. And so I was just happy to be able to make time to come and serve by feeding those who are hungry.
Well, I call myself doing something in the community, but the way things are is never enough. So I decided to not only talk about it, but to be about it. So I came down here to get not only first-hand knowledge, but just to help.
Look back and think about the people who helped me. I didn't always have those things. And then to be able to, as they would say, pay it forward.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Haynie, and welcome to 60 Minutes in Black America. And what you just watched was a video of God's Helping Hand, a organization that I set up this week for donations and for my birthday. You know, last year we raised $4,500 for the Men's and Family Center, which does awesome work in a section of Baltimore. And God's Giving Hand is an organization that feeds the homeless and the hungry here in Baltimore. Rico Crawley does a phenomenal job. And I'll put the information regarding the GoFundMe, and no amount is too small. You know, $1, $2, the whole point is to give. You know, someone told me a long time ago, the only way I can keep what I have is to give it away. My time, my talent, and my treasure. So as the day is my birthday, and I tell you, I mentioned last week, you know, if it's not emotional for me in terms of the conversations that I'm having, then I'm wondering why I'm doing this and who it is that I have on as guest to be impressionable or to give information that I feel is relevant and feel that will be of value to you. And so we'll talk about my very, very special guest today on this very, very special day. And you'll hear a bit more about God's Giving Hand. And I'll put, like I said, some information up there. But I'd like to thank you all, and I hope you all had a good week. I'd like to thank many of you for supporting Chris Wilson. Chris Wilson was our guest last week. We talked about redemption. We talked about a multitude of things that he was doing positively as a returning citizen. And many of you emailed and texted me that you went and bought his books. And I am so grateful that we support our guests in that direction. And I'm sure Chris is grateful as well. This month is Women's History Month. And I said to myself, I said, Women's History Month. So do I ask Michelle Obama? Do I ask Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris? Do I look at Val Demings? So I look at all these people of stature, or do I look right in my neighborhood, in my backyard? And I said, well, what about two women who have been instrumental in my upbringing, in my life, particularly on a day like today, my birthday? Instead of me celebrating me, isn't this a good opportunity to celebrate them and hear from them about their triumphs, their struggles, you know, as Black women coming up in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and getting their perspective, because, you know, maybe that's something we all can identify with. So, as I said, this is emotional to have my 83-year-old mom, you know, and I say that because I hear so many of my contemporaries who aren't in the position that I'm in and whose moms have passed away. And I've always been willing to share my own with them and say, hey, consider my mom, your mom, consider my Aunt Lil, you know, 92 years old. You know, doing this for me today as well. And she has a remarkable story, always admired what she's gone through. So why can't we share? And that's what community is about. You know, that's what a village is about, is being able to share when others aren't. So I wasn't going to wait. And, you know, I'm sorry, Michelle Obama, that you got bumped off my show. I know you're very disappointed. You know, however, my mom and my aunt, were more important to me to have on my show today. So I'd like to introduce the real soul sisters, right? When they talked about and labeled soul sisters way back when, there's no doubt in my mind that they were referring to these two, and then Aunt Yanela, who has since passed away, as the real soul sisters. And as you hear some of their story and you see some of the remarkable photos, you'll understand exactly what I mean. So let me bring, hey, Mommy, how are you?
Hi.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining the show. Looking really forward to having conversation with you and hearing from you. But let me bring your partner, I won't say in crime, your partner in life, one of your partners in life. Hey, Aunt Lil. How are you, Aunt Lil?
Hi, Mike. I'm fine, thank you.
I so appreciate you being here as well. And I'm sure my mother appreciates this, you being here with her. I know it was a agreement, with all that money I had to pay you to decide to appear on my show. My mother's sitting here counting it now, but I can't tell you how happy I am and how much of an honor it is to have you on this day, special day for me. And Aunt Lil, I'm sure we're going to get to the point as to why it's a special day for you as well, on my show. So I've got
Happy
some
birthday.
Hey, thank you very much, and happy birthday to Wayne, my cousin, your son, and we'll talk about Wayne in a little bit, but I've got some pictures to help guide us, a bit through the conversation. And as I told you all earlier, we'll take this as long as we can, although we can't stay until midnight, okay? So, midnight is out of the question. It's an hour show, and I know you all have a lot to share. What are you looking at, Aunt Lil, like that for? Are you ready to go?
I'm all right.
Well, let me just bring up some pictures here. And so Women's Her Story Month is what I kind of labeled this show, given the month of March and it being Women's History Month, and honoring Aunt Lil and honoring, my mother. So again, I mentioned earlier about God's giving hands, and I probably will, beat this dead horse a bit, because I really hope that you all, go to the GoFundMe page and, support Rico and his outreach. As I said, it's not about us necessarily, but it's about those that aren't in a position or as fortunate as us. And Rico does a phenomenal job of ensuring that those that are hungry and need clothing are taken care of. So I really hope that you all, if you want to support anything, instead of sending a card to me, send $2, to Rico, and through this GoFundMe page. But let's go to this next picture. Who is this? Aunt Lil, let's start with you. Who is this, Aunt Lil? You know who this is?
That is my baby sister, your mother, and your Uncle Billy.
Uncle Billy, wow. So talk about these times. This looks like a picture that was maybe in the early 40s or so. First of all, Aunt Lil, how was life for you growing up? When you're the oldest, right? You're the oldest of the two of you, right?
Right. Of the
And so,
younger children. I'm the oldest of the four younger children.
so you're the oldest of the younger four. And so any responsibilities you had there with these two, they look like they were, I won't say a bit of a troublemaker, but my mother looks a little,
Quite a
devious there a bit.
handful.
Was she a handful?
I had to comb her hair, Michael, and she had a whole lot of hair. It may not look like it on there, but she had lots of hair. And she would scream and cry, and I would pull it that much harder.
Oh my goodness. So was that a responsibility? Because I know grandma had passed on at an earlier age, or actually after mommy died. So mommy was born. So Ma, talk about grandma. How was grandma? How did that go without your mom?
Well, it didn't affect me as much as it did my siblings, because I never knew my mother. I was 7 months old when she died. So with my father and my sisters And the lady who my mother asked to watch out for us, who became my stepmother, I was very well taken care of.
And
So a
she did
little,
watch
uh-huh.
out for us.
She
She
did
did.
watch.
She watched out for us. Had it not been for her and the gentleman who was my godfather that we thought was her husband, but he wasn't. The two of them stuck with my father, our father, until we were of the age where we could take care of ourselves. And then he
Right.
left his supposed wife for the lady up the street.
What did you say, Aunt Lil?
You heard what I said. He left who the lady we thought was his wife for the lady up the street.
Oh my, that happened back there. So that was like he ran off into another relationship, huh?
Yep, yes, he did.
Wow.
I saw
Wow.
him on the number 21 bus, and I sat down on his lap because he was my godfather. And he said, Lillian, don't turn your back to the lady. And I went right home and told Dell, who at that time was not our stepmother, but late in life, she became our stepmother because we didn't know anybody but Belle. And she was a blessing to all of us.
Mhm.
And when Daddy came home one time and told us he was going to get married, all four of us said, you better, at the same time, you better not marry anybody but Belle. If you're going to get married, he said, who do you think I'm going to get married? Who do you think I'm going to marry?
So talk about your dad or our grandfather for a bit, where he was from, and how he seems like he did a phenomenal job of being perceptive to what your needs would be as young children. But what kind of career did he have? What do you remember about those earlier times in your earlier life with your father?
You want to tell, honey?
Are you addressing both of us or?
Well, whoever wants to answer, one of you can answer,
Well,
and any other.
Daddy was a chef, but he was from the islands of the Turks and Caicos, and he was a British merchant seaman. So he was a chef. He was a cook on the ship on which he sailed. And when he came to America, he got a job as a chef, and he was a chef until he retired.
Mm-hmm.
I
So, Lil,
often
anything you
wondered,
want to add?
I often wondered after I got older how Daddy made out all those years on his feet because his feet were so, you know, he was on them all day. But he came home every evening and he was just as joyful and funny as he could be.
Wow.
And he'd get up the next morning. He never missed a day's work that I can remember.
Wow.
In all those years, he taught us good work ethics.
I do remember one time it was called the grip then, but it's the flu.
Oh, okay.
And Dr. Noville, who was from Jamaica, came to the house and ordered him to stay in that bed. And that was the only time he missed work. I never knew of my father to miss work, but Dr. Noville said, stay in bed or you're not going to be here with your children.
Wow.
And he stayed in bed. I think he stayed home for a week or almost a week. Other than that, he never, ever missed a day from work.
So your father was reliable, huh? He took care of home and he took care of family and took
Yes,
care
he
of
did.
you all.
Yes, he did.
So what kind of neighborhood did you grow up in? Was it a segregated neighborhood? What section of Baltimore did you grow up in?
No,
And what kind of housing did you live in? And
great big
school-wise?
three-story houses. All the bedrooms were on the third floor, were only two bedrooms, I understand.
The second and third.
Second and only had two bedrooms. No,
Yeah,
three
two on
neighbors,
the second and two on the third.
3 on the side, right. But we had very nice neighbors. I can remember the names of quite a few of them. Miss Minnie, who was the neighborhood watchdog, and Miss Helen, who laid up in the window. She was a watchdog too. You remember her, honey?
Yes.
And
So
they
when you
looked
say
like
when you say neighborhood watchdog, she saw everything going on in the neighborhood.
everything that was going on. Miss Minnie could tell you about everything and everybody.
I think that's somewhat like what's happening now, except people don't talk. The
They
people
don't
like
talk. They're afraid
people
to
don't
talk.
talk. They're afraid to talk nowadays. But back there,
Absolutely.
they would not let bad go in the neighborhood without reporting it probably to the authorities or to your parents or something of that nature. Is that correct?
But they told everything around there on us. So I tell you that. Told plenty on us.
Wow.
Didn't they,
Wow.
honey?
But during that time too, we had police officers walked.
Who cared?
Yeah, and they walked the beat, and they knew everyone in the neighborhood, and they knew
Absolutely.
the people from whom they could get what was going on in the neighborhood. And Miss Helen and Miss Minnie were two of the people.
So the policing back then was different than the policing that you see today. It was more less cars and more police on foot. Is that what you're saying? So you knew?
I don't know if there were any cars. Where did they? They always walked.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember any cars.
Wow. So we had neighbors that weren't afraid to tell because they looked out the window just like we do today. And we had no police cars, right? So the police actually had to walk the beat, look at you, and get to know you. Do you think that was a benefit to the community?
Of course.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what we tell Mayor Scott to do in terms of his crime initiative in Baltimore, get rid of police cars. I mean, I'm not being facetious, but what do you think about that?
It might help. Because all of these shootings that they have going on, it's unreal. I'm afraid to turn the TV on anymore and look at the news because I don't want to see how many got killed last night or early this morning.
Wow.
It's unreal.
So from your perspective, so that wasn't something, Mommy, that was a part of your upbringing when you were young children and teenagers. You don't recall an environment with the type of crime that we have now?
Oh, of course not. The policemen knew everyone, and like people like Miss Minnie and Miss Helen, and if they saw something, they said something. The other thing is that guns weren't that prevalent at the time. When young men wanted to fight, they fought with their fists.
And the sisters went out and helped them.
Well, so you said the sisters went out and helped the brothers fight?
Our oldest sister went out and helped my brother many times.
So your older sister, is that Aunt Yanela or
Rachel.
Rachel?
That was
So
Rachel.
Rachel?
Yes, indeed.
And
She
so
would
she
go
would
out
go out
there.
with Uncle Steve or
Yeah.
Uncle Billy or
Clem, Steve and
with
Clem.
Clem. And so she would actually fist fight too if she had to, but guns weren't a influence, and so you didn't have any of the type of crime that we have because people handle disputes differently.
I don't recall anybody getting shot. I'm sure some people shot people. But yeah, Rachel was tough. She was a physical education teacher at Dunbar. So she went out and took her up for her brothers.
She sure
Oh
did.
my. Oh my. Sounds like she did a real good job of that too.
But
Wow.
tell him about the day she got off the bus at Pennsylvania Avenue and Dolphin Street, going to the movie, and somebody grabbed her on the corner, and she screamed and went running up the street. When she turned around and looked, it was Steve.
Steve.
Our brother. He's so
Oh my.
cool.
Oh my. Well, I didn't expect to get this type of conversation to a point where we could reflect and look at opportunities to improve the way we do things. So you say get the police out of the cars and walking in the neighborhoods, eliminate police cars. And Ma, as a former policewoman, and we'll talk about that time in a little bit, you have some credibility in what you say. And number two, you said that the neighbors hanging out the windows, which we know they are. We know that people see stuff, that people need
Sure
to
they
say
do.
something about it. People need to say something about it in order to change our community. So it isn't necessarily the police, it's the community that solves issues with crime you feel in neighborhoods.
But they're afraid, Michael. People are afraid.
Wow.
Remember what happened to the lady and her, I don't know if it was her family, but I know that it was she over on Preston Street that they shot and killed for going to the police about something that happened in the neighborhood.
Yeah, we've
I
seen a
don't
lot
think
of
if I,
that.
if I
Yeah,
looked
we've
out the window and saw him shooting and killing somebody, I don't think I would say anything either.
right. So you feel as though you wouldn't say anything because you don't feel as though you would be protected, or
I'd be afraid.
you'd be afraid. I hear you. I
I
hear you.
would be afraid.
Well, let's transition away from that. Let's talk about in the 40s or whenever you went to school, high school, middle school, what was schooling like for you back then? Was it segregated, and what kind of education did you feel that you got in middle school, high school? How was your education?
They
First,
didn't have any segregated schools when I was going to school. I don't know about Inez, but they didn't have any when I was going to school.
they didn't have any segregated schools. All
I don't
schools were
know that.
segregated.
Well, I
I
think
don't
our
know.
little means desegregated. So they weren't mixed schools. They were all black schools, either
They were
Dunbar or
all
Douglas,
black
right?
schools, and the blacks got an education because they knew the teachers were interested in them, and they weren't going to let them out of there until they taught them something.
Wow.
When
So
I
are
did
you
something,
saying, Aunt Lil and Mommy, are you saying that
when
even
I
though
did
you went
something
to
wrong,
right, even though you went to schools in your community that were segregated, you got a great education because the educators inside the school cared and wouldn't let you go until you
walked you
got an
home.
education.
They took you home. Many a teacher took me home and reported my behavior. And, I was not the best kid in the school.
Like Mr. Tenson.
Mr. Tenson and Miss Griffin and told on me, Miss Davis told on me, and somebody else told on me.
Well,
They
what would they
always were
tell on you, Aunt Lil? What did you do that somebody would tell on you? I mean,
One
you
of them
always
said
seem
I
to
got up
model.
and one of them said I got up and danced in the seat, but I didn't. That wasn't true.
Oh,
That was legendary in the neighborhood.
what was legendary, Ma?
Her dancing in the sea.
Oh, wow. So you think it was true then?
Yes.
Is that why your
Okay.
teacher told you to go home and take your sister's earrings off? And you had my earrings on.
Right. I was in junior high school. I was rather young when I went to junior high and high school. I was 16 when I graduated from high school. And all the other girls in junior high school wore earrings. They were older than I. And they wore earrings and dressed up. I don't think they were allowed to wear lipstick in school. So I took those earrings and put them on. And the teacher was teaching, and she turned around. She didn't even look at me long. She said, Inez Penn, take your sister's earrings out of your ears. And she went right on teaching while I took the earrings out of my ears. So they knew family. And by our sister being a teacher, even though she taught at Dunbar, black teachers knew black teachers. They knew one another. We also had a separate Department of Education. The building is still on what's the up street, Druid Hill or McCullough?
McCullough, I guess.
McCullough. I think the building was. I think the building was on McCullough. I'm not sure, but you know, they knew everybody knew everybody, and I surely had her earrings on.
You had her earrings on, so they were telling the truth. So let me ask you about education now, and the fact that you went to a school, an all-black school in your neighborhood, and you had educators. I believe that your educators were other African-American teachers, right, in these schools? All African-Americans, a mixed school, or who educated you? Who were your teachers?
All black.
All black teachers, all black school, in an all black neighborhood, and everybody got educated.
You didn't stand a chance on it doing anything.
So what's the problem nowadays? I mean, what's the issue?
Everybody's afraid.
And you just can't compare then with now. Some people say, I've heard people say they felt you got a better education in black school, all black schools. There were black teachers who were just as mean, and if they didn't like you, or if you didn't do as well, and there were teachers who, if you were lighter skinned, they were black, they would gravitate more to the lighter skinned teachers, right, Lil? What are you looking at?
Absolutely.
So, you know, there was segregation within segregation.
There was segregation within segregation.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow.
I remember one day Daddy came up to school. I never wanted him to come to the school because he would be whooping and hollering at you in front of the class. And all the children said, "Who's that man? Where'd that man come from? Is that your grandfather? Where'd he come from talking like that?" You know, so I never did anything after that one time because I never wanted him to come to school.
Wow.
He would go to a PTA meeting, but I didn't want him to come because I had done something.
Wow. Wow. So you went to one of how many? 2 high schools, public high schools that were for blacks, because everything was very much segregated at that point in Baltimore, right? So it was either Dunbar or Douglas that you went to, one of those 2 schools,
depending on where you lived.
And one of only 2 schools, there was no Carver back then. It was Dunbar.
Yeah, it was Carver. Your father went to Carver. Your father graduated from Carver. Carver was always a vocational school.
So you both went to high school. Aunt Lil, where'd you go?
Douglas.
And Ma, you went to Douglas as well.
Mm-hmm. But Brown versus Board of Education took place when I was in the 12th grade. Although I would not have changed schools anyway. But
so the effect of Brown versus Board of Education when you were in school would have given you the choice of going to a segregated or white school in another neighborhood.
An integrated school, yeah.
But you would have stayed in your neighborhood and gone to Douglas.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because I had always gone there. Why should I change school? I was getting a good education there, so why should I leave?
Wow, that's interesting. So do you think that it may be a good thing if we had schools that are more community and neighborhood based, and that there's necessarily not a reason that we have to go across town to go to a school for better education? Does that make sense? Because it didn't make sense to me.
Family structure were different. I don't put anything on schools or anything. I see that the whole family structure is different. The entire family structure.
Could you explain that a bit?
I mean, people just do so many things different. They don't, for instance, when your cousin Joe was a baby, your Aunt Yanela lived with us on Harlem Avenue. She went out one night. And my father called the police on her. I
Oh
was
my.
at home. He was at home.
Who did
Honey was at home.
what?
Daddy called the police on Yanela, said she had the baby there and she was going out. She went out in the street. And there were 4 adults in the house. He called, everybody called Miss White. I don't know if any of you have heard of Violet Hill White. She was the
Absolutely.
first policewoman, and she took care of the whole city. When she got off the 21 bus coming from work, every child that she passed was sitting on the steps saying, "Good afternoon, Mrs. White."
Lillian and Yanela, especially.
Mhm. Everybody.
Wow.
She was
We
well
were
respected.
terrified of her.
Wow. Wow. Well, you know, this is powerful. We're at the halfway point. It's amazing how fast 30 minutes go, and we haven't even gotten into your careers and your families, because there's some interesting stories to tell about that. And, you know, someone just sent me a text that said, "Mommy, you were skipped twice in school." So you were you
3
skipped twice?
times.
Okay, I apologize.
Yes,
So
I accept.
you were skipped 3 times?
Yes. But the schools were okay. You go from the first grade to the second grade. We went from the first, from 1B. Well, let's get to high school. You went from the 10th grade to 11th grade. We went to 10B first, and then halfway the year, we were promoted or not promoted to the 10A. So, in fact, I was a year and a half ahead because I skipped the 4A. I skipped the 4A. I skipped the 4B, 5B, and 6B. But
Wow.
so that equaled a year and a half.
So is that where I get my intelligence from?
It wasn't a whole year each time.
Is that where I get my intelligence from you?
You have to
Okay, you're
answer
not going
that.
to answer that. Yeah, you're not going to answer that. I knew you weren't going to answer that. So let's move to another subject, and then we'll do the halftime and talk about Black USA News in a second. But who is this up here? Did I get the wrong picture?
That's your Aunt Lil.
Oh, is that Aunt Lil? Oh my goodness, that is glamour. Aunt Lil, that's you? How old were you, Aunt Lil?
Probably about 21, I guess.
So right out of high school, right?
Wayne was a baby. Yeah, you were in your 20s.
Yeah, I was in my early 20s.
Wow.
Roderick was a baby.
Wow, you look fantastic. You look
And this was
absolutely
Harlem
stunning.
Avenue. And
Harlem Avenue.
we could sit on the steps. The steps were clean. They had to be washed and scrubbed every day.
Every day.
Wow, that's remarkable. So let me find out, who is that?
That's your mother.
That's Michelle sitting on the step.
No, we're not talking about Michelle. We're talking about the lady in the bush with the big bell bottoms on. So who is that?
It was your mother.
Ma, you look absolutely stunning. So was that the Honey West look, you know, and was this before or after the police department?
I may have been on the police department, and I was getting ready to go on a boat ride with Leroy and his mother and grandmother.
Were you really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you look absolutely stunning, you know, just absolutely stunning. Both of you did back then. And so let's take a minute, let you get a bit of water while I talk about Black USA News, because we're just beyond the halfway point. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for listening today. We're talking about Women's History Month, and I have my mother, Mommy Inez Haynie Dodson, and my Aunt Lil Thomas, who I have agreed to share with the entire world, you know. And today, hearing their remarkable story of their upbringing and of some of the successes, their joys, maybe even some of the tragedies that they suffered in their life. But, you know, we felt like Why should we go looking for big names when we have big names of extraordinary, ordinary women in our lives? And what more can I do to honor than to honor than my mother and my aunt? So I appreciate them being here. But the Black USA News Network was conceived by Donnie Glover. We have grown substantially. We now cover 19 shows over 7 days. We have multiple shows on Sundays. Go to blackusanews.com. And the purpose of Black USA News is to be able to share information in communities of color around the country. So what may be relevant in Baltimore could be relevant in Birmingham, Detroit, New York, Boston, Chicago. There's a Aunt Lil, there's a Mommy Inez in Oakland, California. Matter of fact, Oakland, Dr. Ashley and Doug, hello. Hopefully all is well out there. Looking forward to visiting you guys in a couple of months. But the Black USA News Network, as we begin to compare and share, and what was more relevant than what Mommy Inez talked about in terms of policing? How about running down to the mayor and the police commissioner, wherever we are, and say, hey, get the police out of police cars. Let's try that, for a methodology. And some of the other educational stuff they talked about. Hey, we thrived and we had educators in our junior and elementary and high schools that looked like us, and we did very well. So, I think that, as my mother had said, we have got to begin to look at not making excuses for the structure of family. And I look forward to talking a bit more about that in terms of what our issues are. So the issue of the structure of family, as they talked about losing their mom and the community embracing them and their father being very involved and ensuring that the right people were around to help him raise these young kids at that point. So again, the Black USA News Network, Donnie Glover, very much appreciate you allowing us to have our show on your network. Hopefully you'll be able to step in before we're done and talk a bit about Black USA News. And again, God's giving hand. We flashed God's giving hand up there earlier. Rico Crawley, who I know is listening to this broadcast, as I mentioned, for my birthday, I had asked people if they could contribute to God's Giving Hand, which is a outreach that feeds the homeless and families that are homeless and have needs. And Rico does a phenomenal job. The GoFundMe link is right there. No amount is too small. $1, $2, $3, $100, whatever you have. It is better for us to give than to receive. In order to keep what we have to give it away. Time, talent, treasure. I'm asking you today to give away to God's Giving Hand, Rico Crawley. So Aunt Lil and Ma, thank you again for being on the show. And so beyond high school, I heard you mention Wayne, Ma, and I heard you mention Roddy, and Wayne was our oldest cousin, right, Ma?
No, actually, Clem's boys were oldest cousins.
And this is my cousin Wayne, whose birthday is today, right, Aunt Lil?
Yeah.
Right.
And
right.
Wayne was 10 years older than me, and my cousins meant all to me. Joe, Wayne, Roddy. I used to love going up and hanging out with them, even though they would beat me up all the time and stick me in the closet. But it was just something about being in their presence. But Aunt Lil, do you mind? You want to talk a bit about Wayne, and let's acknowledge he would have been 74 today, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Do you want to talk about Wayne for a minute, Aunt Lil?
Well, he went to work and came home one day and said he had been drafted. And he was very, very upset about it. So I said, well, what are you going to do? You have to serve your time. He said, I'm not going. I'm not going. I said, well, Wayne, you have to go. Anyway, he decided he would enlist in the Air Force. And he stayed in the Air Force for 4 years, served in Vietnam for a year, came back home and was murdered in Washington, D.C. He was 23 years old, a very fine young man. Everybody loved him. The people down there where he worked at Westinghouse, they fell in love with him. All the girls loved him. And he just was no problem. And he just went away.
Yeah, I hear you, Aunt Lil. You know, and I remember that day like it was yesterday. When we found out, we were all upset. I remember going out because I didn't understand. And I say that as we relate to the multitude of people that go through the murder of a senseless death of a young one, and how it changes forever. Changes the dynamics forever of a family. I remember sitting out back, you know, on my mom's porch at 1011 Woodington, and dealing with the feelings of having someone taken away like that, you know, that had gone to service country, come back, and here we are, you know, and so the feeling, whether it's 19, I believe it was 72, 71, 72,
71.
71, to what we're feeling now when we see these senseless deaths, it's no different. They destroy families, and particularly someone like you that you know, was dedicated to your boys at that point. So tribute to Wayne. Happy birthday, Wayne. I was always honored to share a birthday with Wayne. It was an honor to be born on the day that Wayne was born, because he was one of the cousins I most admired. And like you said, Aunt Lil, because I think he was a swimmer at Evanston High School where he went, you know, great athlete, tall, stellar. And I always had that role model in my life, you know, and someone who I think of on a daily basis. So Aunt Lil and Mommy, so you left high school, and oh yeah, let's go back up here, man, because you know, let's show this, Ma. So here's another character, right?
Yes.
And what do you mean by yes, Ma? What do you mean by yes? What does that mean?
It's you.
Oh,
When we
okay.
that was taken when we lived in Germany.
I was
Okay.
thinking who it was.
So what kind of guy was this? You know, guy that said he wanted to role model after his big cousins, etc. So what kind? Because he looks like a really nice guy. His birthday's a day. How was this guy growing up with? Did you have any problems with him? I don't think you did you?
Oh, he was devilish. But
I'm sorry. Hey, Ma, what did you
devilish.
say?
Tell
But
about
I
the
stayed
time
on. I mean, in school,
Sharon cut his
favorite
toe.
his favorite pastime at home was teasing his sisters and his younger brother. But he was a good person.
Okay.
But tell
So I'm
about
still.
the time he Sharon cut his toe off.
Was that the equalizer, Aunt Lil, when Sharon cut my toe? Oh my goodness. So this is like, okay, so we're transitioning into another thing here, but it's all good because we want the viewers to hear your perspective. So was that the equalizer, Aunt Lil? Was that something deserved? Is that what you're saying?
That was the lawnmower.
Well, listen, you know, I like I said, you know, I believe that whoever I am today, and I think I'm not a bad person, you know, I attribute to the upbringing of both of you, Aunt Unella, Uncle Billy, and so can we talk about for a minute Uncle Billy, because he was a major influence, your brother, a major influence in a multitude of our lives in terms of kids and grandkids, etc. Can you talk about him for a bit before we move on to your career? And I see Donnie's in the studio too. And we're going to get Donnie in here at some point to talk about Black USA News. So, Aunt Lil, want to talk about Uncle Billy for a minute?
Yeah, Billy was a fantastic brother. He loved his sisters, I can tell you that. And he was kind to our children, I can tell you that. But he and I used to have our little moments. But I still miss him very much.
Right.
I
This
do
is,
too. Not a day goes by
I
and
know,
I don't think about him.
I know.
Think deeply because we were always together. We had the same birthday also,
Right.
same
Oh,
birth date.
they were
So,
like
Ma, you and Uncle
two
Billy had the
thieves.
same birthday. You and Uncle Billy had the same birthday?
Same birth date. Yeah, he was
Same birthday.
exactly 2 years older than I.
He was 2 years older than you. So when you think about him as your brother and what he did for other people, because he was always just that good. He was a model. When you saw a definition of good guy, his picture was right there next to it. Would do anything for anyone. Quiet demeanor. Used to think he was a heck of a fisherman, but he enjoyed it. But when you think about him, do you think was one of the major characteristics of him as a human being? Either one of you could answer that.
Well, he was kind and loving.
Yes, he was. Very
Wow.
kind.
He
Wow.
took Keith Jr. fishing one day when he was a little boy. He kept asking Uncle Billy to take him fishing. And when they came home, Keith was crying and crying. Keith Jr. was crying and crying. I can't remember now if it was Keith Jr. or Keith Sr., but I think it was Jr. Uncle Billy killed my fish because he had cleaned it, sliced it, and cleaned it to cook it. He was so upset that his Uncle Billy had killed his fish.
Wow, man. Needless to say, that was a fish that Keith Jr. didn't eat or Keith Sr. didn't eat. That's unbelievable. And I think what we're talking about is having role models, having the moms and the aunts and the uncles that participate. Because Ma, you alluded very um, truthfully, that maybe it's the family structure and how we support and raise each other. I listened to how you and Aunt Lil talked about the closeness of you as siblings and your dad's involvement, and when mom passed, the support that was given, and the fact that in schools were no problem, whether they were segregated, and in all black communities, you guys got education, and that the police were absolutely involved. You didn't have the crime issues because the police were out of the car. So we're listening for maybe opportunities to maybe look back at some things that were successful that are easy to do again. I mean, how easy is it to, be supportive of each other within families? How easy is it to tell police, well, you can't have no cars. You got to walk the beat. We're taking all the cars away. How easy is it for us to be invested in our school system so
And
that our kids get educated?
the policemen had a good distance to walk to get back to their districts too. They couldn't
Wow.
just walk around the corner and be at the station.
Wow.
They had a walk to do to
Well,
get
well,
there.
let's talk. Go ahead, Ma.
I don't agree with that idea of police walking the beats. This is a different world. The city is different. It's larger. I mean, the city isn't larger, but the numbers of people. I think they should get out of their car and walk sometimes and know people in the neighborhood. But to have a specific beat for police officers, I just don't agree with that.
Wow. Well, we're going to get to that, Ma, your philosophy of policing when we get to your career. But I got a picture of Aunt Lil up here now. Aunt Lil, this is you, right?
It sure is.
And you were working at Westinghouse then? Was this Westinghouse?
Yes, I was.
So what did you do, and how was it was as a career woman? How was it getting that job? You're in here with I guess a co-worker, and you did a lot of modeling and photo shoots for Westinghouse, didn't you?
Not because I wanted to, but because they forced me to.
Well, because you were
And,
attractive, and they
and
felt
one
as
day,
though you had the personality, right? That's why they did it, right?
no, no. And I told them one day, why don't you go get somebody else? Because that was after Wayne passed, and I didn't want to be fooling around
I got you.
and it really got on my nerves. But When I first went there, I went through hell. Not with the people in the office. This is one of the ladies in the office with me. But the people who would come in to get waited on. I worked in the insurance office. And they would stand around and not let me wait on them. I turned around and said to this lady, she was in the union, and I said, may I help you? She never answered me. I asked her twice, so I knew she didn't want me to wait on her.
Wow. So
I
you
enjoyed
experienced discrimination on the job even back there in the
Oh, yeah.
50s. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
right, right. Well, Ma, we have a picture up here with you at the police department. You and you tell us a story about Baltimore City Police at that point, and you being a Black female joining the police department at that point. What was that like, and why did you decide to join the police department?
Because it paid more than working in office in City Hall. And I have 4 children.
Now, they talked about the fact that you were called. So this is you, number 1, 2, 3, 4. You're 4 from the left on the front, right?
Yes.
And they called you, oh, you're fifth. You're fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're the fifth from the left on the front. And they called you, they said that you were a pistol expert. Is that true?
No.
Well, why'd they call you Hip Shot Haynie?
Because they were teasing me.
Oh.
I was afraid of guns. So it dispels that.
So you weren't Hip Shot Haynie?
Not if it meant being swift with
Man, I gave you legendary status like Annie Oakley. This is so disappointing to hear.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But talk about my policing back then. You were a police officer during the 68 riots, I believe, when Martin Luther King was murdered.
Mhm.
And what was that like policing?
Well, I went out with someone in uniform, ride around in the car, because people were setting houses on fire.
When was that?
1968,
Oh,
when King was killed.
Martin
And
Luther King, right.
And so my, policing were they recruiting Black women and Blacks for the police department then? Was it
they
a
were
large number?
recruiting Black women. They were recruiting women. And
Okay.
there were, I think, 700 women, over 700 women who took the test. And I'm not boasting, but this is just the truth. I came out as number 1. They were hiring 7. They were hiring 7 women.
And you came out as the number 1? I didn't know that. Wow, that's impressive. But I guess not surprising for someone that skipped 3 grades, right? So we're down to the last few minutes, and I want to click through some of these slides. Ma, who is this? I know one's Aunt Yanela, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is Aunt Lil?
Aunt Lil and Aunt Yanela.
What's the name? Rosie the Riveter. Tell them about Rosie the Riveter.
Oh, Aunt Yanela worked at Glenelg Martin, and I imagine most of you have heard of Rosie the Riveter, a woman who really did a man's job, riveting during the war, getting the airplane parts together. And my sister Yanela was one of those. She worked at Glenelg Martin's, riveting parts for airplanes.
Well, it looks as though, and she was a phenomenal human being as well. Loved Aunt Yanela, just loved Aunt Yanela from the time she lived on Lafayette over in East Baltimore to Cherry Hill. I'd follow her. Just you guys were, or girls or ladies, were really soul sisters, just absolutely spectacular, But you know, one thing I recall was that much of the entertainment that you may have gone to was more neighborhood oriented, jazz clubs, etc. Is that true? Like Pennsylvania Avenue and neighborhood bars or eateries. Is that what you remember too? Staying in neighborhoods for entertainment?
That's all we had to go to.
Couldn't go downtown, huh?
Hmm.
Couldn't go downtown. So you were more in
Oh,
the neighborhoods, huh?
no, we couldn't go downtown. Mm-mm.
And here's another picture of my view as a police recruit. Aunt Lil, you always
Man,
enjoyed a good meal, right?
I must have been. I don't know where I was then with my bra straps on.
I think this may have been one of your niece's, what do you call those things, pregnancy party or something like that, that you attended. And then here's you. What's the significance? Is that a Pooh Bear?
That was in New York. Sharon took me to New York after Donald died, and
Wow,
there was someone walking around in a Pooh costume.
wow, wow, wow. Well, you know, we're down to, and this is a stunning picture of you, Ma. Very beautiful picture of you.
Isn't that a beautiful picture?
Yeah, you look
Michael,
like
send me a
Ma.
copy of that.
Thank you.
I will send you that picture and another picture. And Aunt Lil, you as usual, looking like the stellar aunt, grandmother.
Who is that with you, Bill?
With
Who is
me,
the little boy?
that's your grandson. Wesley?
Hey,
Is
no,
it
that is
That's
Cameron.
that's your great grand.
Oh,
That's
I thought
Cameron.
it looked like Cameron, and it couldn't have been Wesley with Rajay being that old. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's your grandson. Well, listen, we're at almost the end of this spectacular. This has been a lot of fun for me, and I was going to say I didn't care whether anybody listened or looked at this, but we have had some phenomenal numbers, and people haven't gone anywhere. So I can't wait to see what all the platforms show in terms of the viewership. But it has been extremely high, and I think that people, as I honored you and wished you to be a part of women's history, I think people enjoyed your story. And I think what people really enjoyed was you being able to relate from when you were growing up to now, because, mind you did mention things were a bit remarkably different then, although Baltimore was over 1 million people and it's down below 600,000 now. I think we still can take some things away from how you were raised, particularly with the family structure, to some of the things that we're lacking today, because money cannot solve everything. Would you agree?
Yes.
Absolutely. So in our last 2 minutes, Aunt Lil, any advice you want to give to the young mothers, young parents out here? Any advice as someone 92 years old that has seen many things in your life, experienced many things? Anything you want to share with our viewers and particularly our young women in terms of success? What you think is maybe the one thing that they need to hold on to?
Stay strong. You have to stay strong, honey. You can't be out there and not see what's going on. And we have to say something. We have to do something. But the only thing I can tell you is stay strong.
How about you, Ma? Any advice for our younger viewers and women out there that, you know, may find themselves in certain instances or situations you may have been? Any advice?
Yeah, I agree with my sister, and that parents have to watch their children. My children had, and my sister's children had certain times that they had to be at home. You know, when they were young, they couldn't just run the streets. And I think people need to keep closer watch on their children.
Wow. Well, you have listened to another segment of, 60 Minutes in Black America. Next week, we will have women, extraordinary, ordinary women, I call them, from California, Atlanta, New York, Miami, Florida, and where else? Washington, D.C., as we just talk about some of the things that just ordinary women do, and the strength, as my mom and my aunt showed today, to give us a sense that, you know what, the women in our community, particularly strong Black women, are the foundation of who we are. I'm so proud to call you mommy and aunt and mommy, because Aunt Lil has been like a mom to me over many instances, as Aunt Lil was, and Uncle Billy, and it's all about family. Have a phenomenal week. Ma and Aunt Lil, thank you so much for doing this. Time went real fast. We could have done another hour. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week, next Sunday, 6 p.m. on 60 Minutes in Black America. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.